What's up everybody, this is the 2024 Kia EV9. So about the EV9, well, it's basically the first three-row mainstream electric crossover that actually has a usable third row, and it's a really big deal. It's the new top model in the Kia lineup, and I mean, it is really striking looking. It's really impressive just how close they got to the concept vehicle, and it looks just like that concept pretty much, including, you know, all the fun little lighting features you see up front here with not only these very cool square LEDs that stack up here into the headlamp, but also with these star map lights that you have here in the grille. And that is the standard pattern, but you'll actually be able to buy several other different patterns if you want to customize that lighting signature and make it your own. There's 5 different ones to pick from, and a really cool little bit of extra customization for those who want it. Otherwise though, up front there, I mean, it's also impressive. This thing is very aerodynamic, even though it's very blocky. You know, they just did a really good job of managing the aerodynamics here, so it'll get great range, up to 304 miles of range here for these. And you know, just a really nice look, especially in this blue color. It really looks great for this GT line version. Coming down to the sides here, another interesting thing is this one on the GT line here has 21-inch wheels, and the wheels are really fun. Even if you go for some of the smaller wheels, there's 19s and 20s available as well on lower trims, and but they all have these really interesting plastic wheel covers covering alloy wheels behind them. But just be mindful if you're someone who is a careless parallel parker, you got plastic wheel covers here. Hopefully they'll be, you know, pretty durable. Use those safety systems and even the automated parking you can get on this in order to help you out and make sure you stay away from those curbs. But otherwise, coming down to the sides, really cool. I love how you have the body cladding here in the gloss black trim. You also have those flush door handles there, which do help to optimize those aerodynamics. And it's a very cool thing when they pop out whenever you're walking out towards the vehicle. Going out to the back there, you have those really expansive taillights that I think are just really unique looking. They're going to look great at night as well. And just, you know, a nice little bit of extra texture to the rear tailgate and all that. And overall, I think it's a really cool look. Now, as far as size goes, it's just a tiny bit longer than a Telluride, but it's pretty much very, very identical as far as the width and the height compared to Telluride. So very familiar with the sizing here, just a tiny bit bigger, but the wheelbase is about 8 inches longer. So that's really the big difference between this and the Telluride from a, you know, appearance standpoint. And that's going to also help with ingress and egress whenever you're getting into that back seat especially. And so overall, yeah, I think it's just a really cool look. I think it's going to really stand out on the road. The interior of the EV9 is really cool and has some fun concept car kind of touches as well, and really feels futuristic compared to even a Telluride or something. So first off, sitting down in these seats, you have these really nice synthetic leather seats. It's synthetic leather on all, and that actually is standard across the board on all EV9s here. And they are so incredibly soft and supple, these seats. They're perforated, they're heated and ventilated as standard as well, which is also really impressive. That base model comes really nicely equipped from an interior standpoint. And so, I mean, just so soft and comfortable for these seats. I love how nice and soft these seats are. And I also love these headrests, which are, I think, something from the concept car, kind of this mesh that's flexible, and it actually is super comfortable to rest your head on. I love, these are some of the most comfortable headrests I've ever used in a car. And so I love that. And so many adjustments for the seats here too. Now for the GT line version, you have adjustable bolstering. That's only in the GT line. There's also ergo motion here in these seats, which is Kia's version of massage. There's also a relaxation mode for these seats as well, where it'll put up a little leg rest here, and that's great for if you want to, you know, relax and nap for a few minutes while your vehicle's charging. Even though these charge pretty fast, you're not going to be able to sit around very long, but you know, really nice if you want to just relax in here. And so super nice, comfortable seats, and it's great that all trims get, you know, the same comfort. Moving on to the steering wheel here, it's really cool. It's got a little bit of a square shape to the top and the bottoms. That, especially on the top here, helps you to be able to see these screens better, but it's still a nice, you know, relatively round wheel, so it's pretty traditional feeling still, which is appreciated for me. And it's a great 9-3 grip, a little 10-2 notches, and some buttons here on it. They're the typical kind of buttons you're used to on most other Kias, but I do like this gray paint you see for the buttons here, the plastic buttons. You see that also on the doors and stuff. It's just a nice different color. It's going to look better than the piano black stuff that everyone else uses these days. There's actually no piano black whatsoever in this interior, which is great. I love all the gray colored plastic. I think it actually looks pretty cool. And you also have the paddle shifters here, and even the drive mode selector on the steering wheel here. You'll also notice that you have the gear shift here on the steering column, and that's also where you'll find your power button, which is interesting. Other Hyundai, Kia group stuff has the same shifter, but doesn't have the power button there. This is the first one I've seen with that. And this is actually really intuitive, really easy and quick to flip around from drive to reverse and things like that. I love that placement, and, you know, obviously frees up the middle here, so you don't have to worry about a shifter. here. But moving on to the gauges here. So that's another thing, is the tech is fantastic. They're all standard across the board with double 12.3 inch screens and this little 5-inch HVAC screen in the middle here. But first off, as far as the gauge cluster screen, it's mostly the same kind of stuff you're used to from other digital clusters and other Kias, with that little center portion, you know, being able to scroll through a few different things, but still doesn't show you like your radio station or any audio information or anything like that. And with the drive modes, you also get to change the look of those dials a little bit. And so, you know, really nice, simple gauges. They display the information well. You also have a head-up display here only on the GT-Line version. It's a 12-inch head-up display, and it's really good. It'll show you all your safety information, the speed and all that, of course, and a really well-done system there. Coming over to the middle of the dashboard here, though, like I said, you have this little 5-inch HVAC screen and this 12.3-inch touchscreen. And this is running Kia's newest software as well, and it's able to have over-the-air updates. The whole car can do over-the-air updates, but the screen as well can do that. And one huge thing, probably in my opinion, the biggest thing, is that finally wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto on the big screens here. Previously, you only had that wireless capability on small screen, like base models of Kia products. And so now to have the wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto is super nice. And this screen, you know, the menus and stuff are all really good. It's pretty similar to the stuff we're used to from some of the newest Hyundai vehicles as well, and it works really well. You know, the maps and all that works great. You know, going through the radio stations and all that is, you know, mostly fine. There's no tune knob. I still would like to see a tune knob, but not a big deal once you have your favorites all programmed in there. I also really like the EV page. That's really good. It gives you all kinds of information to nerd out on if you want to get into all the nitty gritty of the EV stuff and your efficiency. It'll really nicely lay all that stuff out for you. And I really like this volume scroller here too. It's a really cool thing, and you can actually customize that to be your tune knob as well. If you are okay using the steering wheel controls for volume, then you have that there for tune as well. So that could be a nice little workaround. And it's great that Kia offers you those kind of customizations. I also love these star buttons here on the steering wheel and on this little capacitive touch bar, which is another concept car touch that actually made it to production amazingly. And it's really cool because those buttons don't illuminate unless the car is on, and they kind of hide away otherwise. But those star buttons you can assign to various different functions, and another way of customizing the car, making it your own. That's something that other car companies usually don't let you do too much of. My one critique though with this screen is the fact that if you want to see the song title of the song you're listening to, the only way to do that is to go into the media page and then hit in the bottom right corner. You have to pull up a thing that takes up the entire screen and shows you that that song name. Otherwise, you just always see album art. And I mean, you know, I don't know how many people care about seeing the song title, but for me, I like seeing that, and you only see that there if you have that one giant thing up, unless you're running CarPlay or something, which obviously shows it. But in the in-car media stuff, that's the only little thing it kind of irks me about this new system. I kind of miss the old system where it just showed you everything on the media page, but minor nitpick, otherwise a really great system. It's also hooked up to this Meridian surround sound system. First time we're seeing a Meridian in a Kia, and it's a 14 speaker system, 708 watts, and that is something that you get here on these upper trims, and this GT line of course has that as well. Coming down though, you know, you have a few hard buttons here for your HVAC controls, and you have again this 5-inch screen here, and you know, just a few little button taps. It's not quite as advanced as the other screens, but it's good enough. It's, you know, a cool way to have a separate dedicated bank of buttons there, so you don't have to dig into the screen like so many other car companies just bury the climate controls in the touchscreen. Coming down, you have your USB-C jacks there and a traditional power outlet, which is great. And you also have so much storage in here. As you can see, you have the center bin, but even in front of that, you have a little bit of extra space if you want. But even a huge bin there. And then coming up, you have your 2 cup holders, which also, I love how Kia does this, where they slide away if you don't need them. You also have a nice cover on it. You also have a fingerprint reader, which you can assign to your you know, memory. That's how you do your memory functions. You also have a wireless charging pad and a center armrest, which only has a little bit of space there, but you know, because you have all these other large bins and the fact that you can cover up this cup holder area means you still have some nice concealed storage spaces, but not too much space there under the armrest. But it is a nice softly padded armrest. You also have nice pockets in the doors with a bottle holder. And the last little thing up front here I want to mention is you do have an opening moonroof. A lot of other EVs, you know, they've sealed off glass roofs. They're seamless and really cool looking. But with this, you know, this double roof thing instead. But I really like that means you can open up this front one, and that back one is also nice and expansive as well. But moving on to the back seat here in the EV9. First off, in that second row, lots and lots of space. I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I mean, I have, you know, many inches of leg room there to spare. They're the same great comfortable seats too, with all kinds of adjustments there. You also have the relaxation mode here. If you get the $2,000 VIP seat option there in these upper trims, then that will give you those seats. But I mean, you know, heated and cooled back there too, and they have their own sunshades, their own pockets in those doors there as well. They have their own cup holders, and also a really cool opening drawer that is covered, but has a lot of extra space in there. There's also USB-C jacks built into the seat backs here of the front seats. But then moving on to the very important third row here in the EV9, that's its biggest perk, is that actually usable third row. So it is slightly more headroom and slightly more legroom than a Telluride, but it's really close. Just based off personal impressions, I'd say it's pretty much identical as far as my impressions of it, but it is still a really good amount of space back there. So I first off love that it's a one-touch power sliding second row seat there to get it out of the way if you want to hop in the back that way. It's also wide enough you can walk right through the middle there instead if you'd like. But anyway, that third row is really nice and comfortable. Same comfortable seats here, nice and soft. And I'm 5'9", and me sitting behind myself. Now, if the second row slid all the way back so it has maximum legroom, then my knees are up against the seat back there, and I'm going to need to use that aisle to, give my other knee a little bit of relief there. But if you slide that second row all the way forward, and there's obviously various degrees in between, depending on how much space the second row needs. But if the second row seat is slid all the way up as far as it'll go, I still have a couple inches of legroom, again, sitting behind multiple versions of myself here. And then with me in the third row there, I have, at least an inch or so of legroom to still spare, being fully spread out there. So, I mean, it is usable for adults. Good amount of headroom there still. They have their own USB-C jacks, cup holders, air vents, map lights, they've got it all back there. And so it's, a really usable third row in an electric vehicle, which is something that we haven't seen with, anything else, even in the luxury segment that offers a third row. They're all cramped and tiny, and this one is actually usable all the time. It's easy to get into. It's, not a pain, and it's just really well done. This is one of the reasons why the Telluride is one of the best sellers, because it's such a well done third row. And they just copied all those same great learnings into the EV9 here, so it means that it's a really good third row and just really well done. Moving on to the cargo space here in the EV9, it's pretty similar to Telluride as well. It's about 20 cubic feet of cargo space back there with those third row seats up. Of course, you can drop the third row if you want more space, but you'll see they have the power outlet there and the other little buttons and stuff. But one thing I will say is that when you lift up the floor, you don't have as much underfloor storage as you have in the Telluride. Then you just have your basically fix-a-flat can and a few things there, but that's about it. So not as much under the floor there. So I'd say Telluride still wins out in the cargo carrying capacity just slightly, but that's the only little thing I'll say. Otherwise, size wise, you have, I think, even slightly more space than the Telluride by the numbers and just by the feel of it. But anyway, let's start up and go for a drive. So the EV9 here has a really cool, it's the same shape as the other new Kia keys, but I love how it's white and has a nice texture to it here, and just the buttons there on the side. There's also digital key 2.0 that this has, so you can use your phone, and you don't even need to turn your phone on. You just have your phone in your pocket. The NFC thing does its thing. You can also use an NFC credit card kind of thing to start the vehicle. You can text the key to people if you want to do all that kind of stuff, but it's great you still have a traditional key as well. But of course, you just put your foot on the brake, hit the power button, and it turns right on. All right, so setting off here in the EV9. So we're in the GT-Line version today, and the first thing you notice about, I think, is the really good visibility. You have a nice high seating position, and for me, it feels pretty similar to being behind the wheel of a Telluride as far as a size standpoint and, how high of a seating position you have here. It definitely feels like an SUV. You're sitting up, nice and high, and, nice thin A-pillars. You have, great view out of the sides, and view out of the back is also really good. Typical three-row crossover kind of visibility there. But you do have the camera rearview mirror here that you get on these upper trims, and that's going to be great, especially if you have people in that third row, so you don't have anything blocking your view. You have an unobstructed view there. Other things you notice here right off the bat, I think the first thing that really jumps out at me is just how quiet it is. Obviously, it's an EV, so you don't have any engine noises or anything, but even just road noise and all that is really minimal. They have some low noise tires on here. You also have acoustic laminated glass here for the windshield and the front windows, and then on these upper top two trims you also have laminated side glass for the rear doors as well. And so it is, I mean, even among EVs, this is a standout in my mind as far as just how quiet it is. Other things here that I'm noticing. So the steering weight is slightly heavier than some other EVs that I've been testing. And this is also just in the normal mode right now. There's a bunch of different drive modes. There's the sport mode, there's eco, snow, all that kind of stuff. It has a nice amount of heft to it. And I think it it's not overly heavy, but it's not overly light. It's just a really nice sweet spot. Also, I like the calibration for the throttle and the braking. They're both pretty relaxed. And so obviously sport mode, all that will sharpen that up if you want, a little bit more of a jumpy feel. But I think for, again, someone who basically wants an electric electric Telluride, this is right on the mark as far as, what those kinds of buyers are going to want. It's nice and easy to be smooth with the brakes. You don't really feel any kind of differentiation between the regen and the friction brakes. It's easy to drive smoothly, and just is a really user-friendly experience. You hop in this and right away there's no learning curve, in my opinion. You get in it and everything works the way you're expecting it to and wanting it to. All right, so I put it up into the sport mode, and let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. All right, it gets up and moves really nicely. Wow, it's impressive. And it's also funny, you do get a little bit of nosedive whenever you get back on those brakes there a little bit, but it's pretty well controlled with body motions. But anyway, so here for the GT-Line version, you get a little bit more punch than the other versions of the EV9 here. So you have 379 horsepower on all these all-wheel drive versions, but here for the GT-Line, you get 516 pound-feet of torque versus 443 pound-feet of torque in the lower all-wheel drive trims. And so it's punchy, and it gives you a 4.5 seconds 0 to 60 time is what Kia claims, and yeah, it is very, very punchy. And you might be able to hear there's a little bit of sound there. You can turn that off, and you can also make it louder if you'd like. I just put it on the lowest setting just to give you a little sample. It's a nice little, EV kind of sound that, you see across all the other Hyundai and Kia EVs, and it sounds good though. I think it's appropriate for this vehicle, and it's fun to have some kind of, audible feedback there if that's something you like. It's also really good at putting the power down. You have this torque vectoring all-wheel drive system, which helps to maximize that power, but you do have the option for rear-wheel drive. So on the lowest two trims, you're going to have rear-wheel drive, and in those, if you go for the base one, it's going to have 215 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. If you go for the long range, which is the big battery with just that lowest rear-wheel drive version, that actually goes down to 201 horsepower, so that'll be the slowest one. That'll do just under a 9 seconds 0 to 60, assuming that you don't have a bunch of people loaded up in the vehicle. And so, it's really going to vary as far as the performance. It's either, not much or a lot, and there's really no middle ground here currently. But, I think that rear-wheel drive version will be great for people that never see weather, but I feel like most people are going to want to go for that all-wheel drive version, and you're all going to have a lot of punch there. And for reference, that's about it for these, higher trims here with that 4.5 seconds 0 to 60 time. That's a full 2 seconds faster than a Kia Telluride. So, I mean, you get a big increase in performance if you are someone who's coming out of a Telluride and you're going into this electric thing. Not only is the power instant here, there's no waiting around for transmissions or engines to rev up, but it's it's instant with the electric thing, but it's also just a lot more power than the 290 odd horsepower you get there with the Telluride. So for most of the trims here, you're going to have a 99.8 kilowatt hour battery, and these are all on the e-GMP platform, which means you have super fast charging. It's 210 kilowatt peak charge rates here for this version with this big battery pack. Surprisingly, the smaller 76.1 kilowatt hour battery pack that you're going to have in that very base trim, and only in that very base trim, that one actually has a slightly faster 235 kilowatt charge rate. But so as far as, it's a really big battery pack, so it's not going to charge quite as fast as other Kia EVs from the 10% to 80% mark. They're saying that's going to take about 24 minutes. In an EV6, for example, that takes, I think, about 18 minutes or so. But it's that same great fast charge rate. It's just that, you have more battery to fill up here. So as far as range figures for this battery pack, this GT-Line version we're in here is 270 miles of range, but you can get 280 miles of range in those lower all-wheel drive trims. And then the range champ is going to be the second to the bottom trim. That one does 304 miles of range, being the rear-wheel drive, the slowest one, but having the big battery pack. That smaller battery pack rear-wheel drive one, I believe, does like 234 miles of range. But, I think that, the range is good, especially considering how fast these recharge. It's not going to be that big of a deal. And the fact they got it as aerodynamic as they did, these are very good with aerodynamics. For something that's as blocky as this is and as large as it is, it's really impressive. It is very aerodynamic. And it's awesome that you're able to get almost 300 miles of range out of something with this size. Other cool things, though, about this battery pack here is it does not only vehicle to load, but also vehicle to home. So for those who aren't super techie, what that means is you have the option with an adapter to be able to plug things into this and use the battery pack in the vehicle to power a coffee maker or microwave or, whatever you want to do at a tailgate or something like that. But with the vehicle to home feature, it's going to come eventually where you're going to be able to use this as a backup power source. So if the power goes out at your house, if you have your house wired up and you have the wall box and all that set up in order to feed back into that, it can be able able to basically power your house for a certain amount of time. And there will be more details coming about that, you know, later on here. But as far as just what we know so far, it will have that capability. It will eventually also be able to feed back into the grid, even if it deems that that's something that, you know, you want to do and something that is worthwhile to do. And we got a couple little corners here. I'm just in the normal mode now, just to get a little feel for the handling. And it's really nice and flat, so it actually disguises the weight pretty well, in my opinion. These weigh almost 5,900 pounds, and that is, for reference, about 1,350 pounds heavier than a Telluride. I mean, that is a lot. But from behind the wheel here, you wouldn't really notice. I mean, you have upgraded brakes here to compensate for that extra weight compared to the kind of brake size you get on a Telluride. And also, they made the tires wider. So you have, I think, about 40 millimeter wider tires. They're 285s here on this. And so it's going to give you better handling as well. It's definitely sportier. You also have that battery nice and low in the floor there. So all your center of gravity is going to be a lot lower than in a Telluride or any other, you know, gas-powered vehicle for that matter. And so it's really going to be, you know, very flat kind of feel. I'm not going to review this like a sports car, because even though this is the GT-Line, again, we're talking about what is primarily a family crossover. Yes, it's sporty, but no one's going to be taking this on a track day or an autocross event, so I'm not going to get into all the specifics of the handling here, but just know that yes, it is heavy. It doesn't feel heavy from behind the wheel here, really. It just, I mean, it feels substantial, and it feels, you know, like you're rolling around in something that's obviously, it's large, it's, you know, has a commanding presence on the road and all that, but you know, it doesn't feel cumbersome. It hasn't gotten in the way yet for me. We were on some windier corners even as a passenger earlier. Felt totally flat and planted. And now we're on a little bit of a bumpier road here, and this kind of shows off just the ride quality, which is very good. You know, I mean, we're going over, you know, broken pavement here and little undulations and bumps, and it really soaks it up so well, especially for something with fixed dampers. There's no adaptive dampers here. There's no air ride suspension or anything fancy. It does have a self-leveling rear suspension, but as far as, you know, any kind of handling or ride quality stuff, there's nothing there to help it out. And we also have these tires have pretty thin sidewalls. You can go down to 20s and 19s on the lower trims, and so that'll give you, you know, even a better ride and, you know, more absorption there compared to these 21s. But it's amazing on 21-inch wheels, and, you know, all that weight being super low, you know, to not have any kind of fancy suspension tech helping you out. This is a really smooth ride, and I think, especially again coming out of a Telluride, I think this is going to feel a little bit tighter as far as the handling, and probably the ride, you know, I'd say maybe, I mean, I'd have to go back to back to really say definitively, but I think a Telluride might feel a tiny bit softer. But I mean, that's just from my recollection from last year driving a Telluride, so it's not a great comparison, but just worth noting from my memory, I would say this is very close. But I think, you know, because it's a little bit tauter with the ride, it just, to me, feels a little sportier than Telluride, but not by much. You're going to still have a totally smooth, very pleasant ride. Now, as far as safety tech goes here in the EV9, again, being the flagship in the Kia lineup, it has everything basically, and most of the stuff is actually standard. Stuff like blind spot monitoring is standard, automatic emergency braking is standard, all those types of things. Even highway drive assist 2.0 is the standard here on these, and so that's going to, you know, give you that lane keeping assist. And also this vehicle is the first to introduce their newest version of their lane keep assist system, which will help with keeping you centered in your lane. And I will say though that it currently has on the lane keep assist function, and at least on two-lane roads, it is a little overzealous sometimes. It's not super annoying with how much it's nudging, but it is certainly present, and you certainly know that it's there and it's working. You know, even though I'm not going over road lines or something, it still is liking to, you know, bump me or nudge me a little bit here and there to, you know, keep me on its intended course of what it thinks I should be doing. Thankfully, of course, all those types of things you can turn off if you don't like that much assistance, but it is nice that you have that stuff. But everything, you know, rear cross traffic alert, all these things that, you know, you're expecting, it has as standard. The only two safety features that are optional are a 360 camera and also the remote smart park kind of feature that you can get. And those aren't really safety things, they're just extra convenience things. One other cool safety thing though that not many vehicles have is the fact that this has a center airbag. And so obviously it has, you know, all the other airbags, I think there's 10 total, and it's, you know, going to be a very safe vehicle, of course, but that's an extra little thing that, you know, is just worth noting. And so that center airbag will prevent you from bumping into the passenger in certain crashes where I guess that, you know, does occasionally happen. And so you have that too. So I mean, this thing is going to be a cocoon of safety. But really the last thing to mention here is the pricing and how it compares to kind of competition. This is really kind of going unopposed. There's no competition really that's directly competing against this. As of right now, Kia is the first one out here with an electric 3-row thing with an actual usable 3rd row that isn't huge amounts of money like those luxury brands are. And so, yeah, I mean, these are going to be starting out, including destination, right over $56,000. And then the cheapest all-wheel drive one, I think, comes in right around $65,000. And then this GT-Line version here, this is about $73,500, but then this one also has these VIP 2nd row seats, which is a $2,000 upcharge. So realistically, you're going to be coming in around 75 or so for these. I'll put the exact figures on the screen there. So, you know, those prices, yes, it is more expensive. I mean, this basically starts where the Telluride ends. For a fully loaded Telluride, gets you a base EV9 with 215 horsepower and rear-wheel drive. So, I mean, there's definitely an upcharge there. It's about a $9,000 premium over a comparable Telluride. This does start higher than a Telluride since you get like heated and cold seats as standard. That's something you don't get standard in a Telluride. So comparing a comparable Telluride, which is kind of a mid-grade one for those, you know, you're coming in about $9,000 extra. One important thing to note though about the pricing is the tax credit situation. So Kia did say that they are going to be starting to build these in Georgia here in May of 2024. So at that point, it'll be eligible for the $3,750 tax credit at least. And then they're saying that also towards the end of 2024 here, whenever their battery plant does come online, that they should be eligible for the full $7,500 by the end of 2024 here. Now, again, things could change timeline-wise, but that seems to be the plan currently. So as a result, I mean, that means that if you're not in a hurry to buy one of these, you could potentially get, you know, either $3,750 or also potentially $7,500 if you're fine waiting until end of 2024 here, maybe into 2025, just to play it safe. But aside from comparing it to the Telluride, I mean, pricing is really irrelevant because it is still a huge bargain compared to, again, everything else that is electric and offers a 3rd row. You know, you look at Rubicons, those start for the R1S in the low 80s starting, and then, you know, getting other, you know, stuff added on to it to make it comparable is going to make those even more. You know, a Tesla Model X is like in the low 90s for a comparable, you know, 7-seat version of the Model X. And then, you know, other stuff like a Model Y and the Mercedes EQB, the 3rd row is basically useless in those, so they're not even competitors in my mind if you actually want a 3-row EV and actually plan to use the 3rd row. And so, you know, I think that when you look at it in that context, again, we will have to wait and see what the competitors do as far as whether or not this turns out to be a good value compared to those. But, you know, there's really no competition as of right now. And, you know, there will be competitors coming. Hyundai's going to have a version of this same vehicle, probably called the Ioniq 7, and so we will see. But typically, you know, Hyundai and Kia price their stuff within, you know, like $1,000 of each other. Usually there isn't much differentiation there pricing wise. The only other wild card we don't know pricing for yet either is the Volkswagen ID Buzz that is coming here this year, and technically that is kind of a van or a minibus, but you know, that's going to have the cheaper materials with the Volkswagen. You know, their ID stuff, you know, isn't super high end, isn't quite as luxurious feeling as this is, but that is certainly, you know, if you want 3 rows and you want something electric, there's a chance that that could potentially come in a little bit, you know, less expensive, but that also could be very similar. We will just have to wait and see, so I can't make any judgments or comparisons with that. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the EV9 so far. Overall, I'm really impressed with it. I'll hopefully be getting one of these for a week to get more in-depth impressions of what it's like to live with one of these, so definitely subscribe and stay tuned to the channel here for more impressions on an EV9 here down the road. But overall, I'm very impressed so far. It is really top-notch, and if you've been wanting an actual usable 3-row electric crossover and you're not looking to spend 80 plus grand, you know, this is the only game in town, but that doesn't have to mean that it just wins by default. It's very, very good. And honestly, there's nothing that I can say I genuinely don't like about it. I'm trying to find something that I don't like here, but I can't find anything, to be totally honest. I mean, I think if I want to really nitpick, this little HVAC screen is partially obscured by the steering wheel. That's the only little thing that I can, I guess, say, but I mean, everything else is great. So they just knocked it out of the park, in my opinion, with the EV9. And so anyway, that's all of my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on the EV9 in the comments below. Huge thanks to Kia for providing me here with this opportunity, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.